Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back with you for the 211th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We're starting out with 46 people, and the great Greg Palast is waiting for us in Portugal. We got a ton to discuss today, but we want to start, of course, with our magnificent Poet Laureate Mimi German, who's out in Rattlesnake Country in Eastern Oregon. Mimi, our Laura, do you want to give us our poem for today to get us going?
Yeah. Hi, Greg.
Hey,
Oh,
Hey, Greg's with us. Good
hey,
for you, Greg.
awesome. Okay. So, I just have to say this before I read this poem to have it make sense for the group. It's called Resistance, and I've been doing a lot of reading on the women of Rojava and Jinwar. And okay, that's enough said. We should talk about that on another show.
Please.
Resist, yeah, resistance. How much you resist is how much you are alive, say the women of Rojava. There, the women ground the moon. Men fold into the kitchen, their mothers, protectors of the village, where power is neither beholden or given. In the commune of my mind, I live with them, fighting. But I live here in this fight, and the dream has no language, and democracy is the color of ravens and the stench of a dead coyote. Cows stand high on the pile, taking in one last view, where the road plows forever into the stark of America. Ah, fresh snow presses down on the backs of wind-torn sagebrush. Sun glazes over all that is and ever was, bending toward breaking. Resistance is life. I breathe their words. Thanks, y'all.
All right. Very beautiful. Thank you, Mimi. As always, you're fabulous. It's great to open with a poem from you, and we'll hope you join us again next week on President's Day, too. We will meet again next week. And in the meanwhile, we got Greg Palast with us. Or do
It's,
we? Do I see him?
yeah, Sluggo, I have an introduction that Greg asked us to use.
Oh, okay. Mike Hirsch, since I've known Greg since before he was born, I never remember to introduce him. So, Mike Hirsch, can you give us Greg's bio here?
Sure. Greg Palast is known for his investigative reports for The Guardian and bestsellers, including The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Greg Palast's new film about the latest attacks on the right to vote that bent this past election is called Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitman. And it was narrated by Rosario Dawson and produced by Martin Sheen. Leonardo DiCaprio has released the film for free streaming at gregpalast.com. And in my opinion, gregpalast.com is a great website and a valuable resource for all kinds of information about this. And it collects Greg's reportage, which is as good as anybody's in the entire world.
Hey,
wow, thank you.
and
The
Greg,
check's in the mail.
and for those of you in radio land, Greg is wearing one of his patented 1950s style yarmulkes. And Greg, it's just, I know you want to speak in Portuguese, but if you can do this one in English, we'd really appreciate it. You are the lead guy and have been for 25 years on the ability to steal elections through disenfranchisement, starting with Jeb Bush in Florida 2000, all the way up to 2025. So, Greg, give us the scoop. What was the real story of the 2024 election?
Trump lost. Jim
Well, we all
Crow,
lost.
Jim Crow and vote suppression won. And I want to give you the numbers. Now, yeah, you see, for those watching, I have my fedora. So you know I'm an investigative reporter. But before I was an investigative reporter, I was a forensic economist. That it means a detective who's good with numbers. And I got my degrees in that field from University of Chicago, and I taught statistics at Indiana University, and then I worked for the United States Justice Department, several attorneys general, going to courts, doing the calculations of the type you're about to hear. And these calculations were presented to a federal court by the NAACP, Black Voters Matter, and they were this work was done actually for the ACLU. Now let me give you the bottom line. If it weren't for vote suppression, and now votes, what is vote suppression? It's a very fancy term for shafting people of color out of their votes by many means, which I'll go through in some of the details. And you don't have to take out your calculator and you don't have to write down these numbers, because you can get all this information at an article I wrote for Tom Hartman at gregpalast.com. And there's an article called Trump Lost, Vote Suppression Won. Here are the numbers. I would hope you'd get there and pass that article around. It's a little long, but not too many numbers to overwhelm you. But here's the bottom line, Sluggo and good friends. If it were not for vote suppression tactics, removing voters from the voter rolls, disqualifying their ballots, Kamala Harris would have had another 3,565,000 votes. Got to put her ahead of Trump by 1.25 million ballots on the popular vote. Most important, she would have taken 4 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Now, how do they do it? Let's start with this number. And this, now, I want you to understand, these numbers do not come from GREG PALAST. All I do is calculate and do some arithmetic. It's not that big a deal. Before this election, 2023, when they purged voters the year before an election, according to United States Elections Assistance Commission, not me, 4,776,706 voters were removed, purged from the voter rolls without any good reason. And I'm not guessing. I'll go through that. 4.8 million, that's almost 5 million voters were simply not allowed to vote, overwhelmingly Black, and I'll tell you why. In addition, 2,120,000 mail-in ballots were not counted. Were not counted. What do you mean? 2,120,000 mail-in ballots weren't counted. Now, where do I get these numbers? Again, from the government, but I would note that NPR, National Petroleum Radio itself, did an analysis and found that 13.8% of all mail-in ballots don't get counted. Now, 1 in 7 American mail-in ballots don't get counted. What? Now, MIT says that that's a very low, that's a low end of a range of disqualified ballots. I use a more conservative number. Now, look, guys, if it were random, it wouldn't matter whose mail-in ballot is rejected. But the state of Washington, again, not me, but the state of Washington determined that if you are Black, the chance your ballot will be disqualified is 400% higher than if you are white. Again, 4-to-1 disqualifications of ballots. Now, how do you disqualify a mail-in ballot? You send in your ballot, you think it's been counted. Wake up, Jackson. In states like Georgia, if you registered as Harvey S. Wasserman, but on the outside of the envelope that you mailed in, you put Harvey Wasserman and left out the S, your ballot gets disqualified. 300,000 ballots get disqualified for things like postage due. They look out for ballots coming in from Democratic, Black areas, student areas, and they go after them. They challenge signatures. They remove hundreds of thousands of people for signatures not matched. Well, you're basically accusing people of a felony forgery crime. How many people have they arrested for this crime? 0, but they take away their ballots. Spoiled ballots. You know what spoiled ballots are? That's the business, the voting biz term for ballots that are cast in the precinct but aren't counted because you put an X instead of filled in a bubble. It wasn't folded right. The machine didn't read it. Now, what's the chance? Now, again, if it's random, that's 585,000 votes minimum. 585,000 voters. did not get their ballots counted, had them rejected. Now, if it's random, it doesn't matter. But according to the United States Civil Rights Commission, the United States Civil Rights Commission, the chance your ballot will be rejected for one reason or another, not counted, is 900% higher if you're black than if you're white. Again, this is not a GREG PALAST statement. I'm just reporting it. Provisional ballots. If you're white, you may not even know what a provisional ballot is, right? But a provisional ballot is you show up and you were purged, you were challenged, something went wrong, your name is there. They didn't like your ID. So they said, no problem. Just fill out this paper ballot, stick it in an envelope, provisional ballot. You write your name on the outside and they'll count it. No, they won't. No, they won't. Whatever stopped you from getting your ballot in the first place will stop you from getting that ballot counted. Places, again, like Georgia and many other states, you cannot get your ballot counted, your provisional ballot counted, unless you physically go into your county voting clerk's office, show your ID, show your proof of citizenship, show your address, then they'll count it. You know how many provisional ballots are knocked out? According, again, to the United States Elections Assistance Commission, 42.3%. Almost half of all provisional ballots are thrown in the dumpster. Now, again, if it were anyone, who cares? But again, according to, this case, the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law School, they said the chance that your ballot will be disqualified, you will be shunted to a provisional ballot, is 300% higher if you're black, Hispanic, or Asian American than if you're white. It's racial. It's not anyone's provisional. It's not everyone who gets a provisional ballot. It's not everyone's provisional ballot that gets counted. As I said, the rejection rate for black ballots is 900% higher than whites. The worst thing that's happened in this election, the worst, is a brand new system of Jim Crow. These other things I mentioned, they've been in every other election. They're worse this year than probably any other. But this year there was a brand new Jim Crow vote suppression horror. It's called the Vigilante Challenge. What are vigilante challenges? They are when GREG PALAST says that Harvey Wasserman doesn't live in California and shouldn't be allowed to vote there. Now, who is GREG PALAST to say that? I'm not a government official. I'm a self-appointed vote fraud vigilante saying, don't let that guy vote. This was last used in 1946 by the Ku Klux Klan to challenge most of the black voters in Georgia. They succeeded and they elected a Klansman as governor. But the governor, the Klansman governor, Eugene Talmadge, was about to be arrested by Harry Truman's FBI, but he drank himself to death before they could handcuff him. It was illegal in 1946, but it wasn't somehow illegal in 2024, Mr. Biden. And I don't make fun of people who are cognitively disabled, but nothing happened from our U.S. Justice Department on this matter. And I'm very concerned because the group that organized this mass vigilante voter challenge is True the Vote out of Texas, a Trump front group. And they announced publicly that there were 317,886 voters that they had challenged. By August, 3 months before the election, they announced they were going to go for a total of 2 million challenges. Then they took it off their website, realizing that's a good way to get sued. The NAACP said they were facing over 200,000 challenges in Georgia alone. Now, who was challenged? Go see my film, Vigilantes, Inc. And again, as Mike mentioned, if you go to gregpalast.com, you can stream the film Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen, for no charge, thanks to the generosity of Jamie Foxx and Leonardo DiCaprio. Stream that, and then, damn it, send that link out to every person you know. Get that article about how Trump lost. Send it out to everyone you know. Everyone asks me what to do. Well, first you begin with education. You have to unstupid America. And don't just send it to your friends. Send it to your goofy brother-in-law in Iowa who thinks Trump won. Now, how did this? So in the case of these vigilante purges, the reason the film, by the way, is called Vigilantes Inc. is that's the name that the Ku Klux Klan used to cover its tracks before the 2024 election. And so that's what they did before the 2024 election. And in Georgia, for example, you'll see in my film, Major Gamaliel Turner, 70-year-old career military, the Pentagon's expert on warfare of the future. Now he has a home near Fort Benning, Georgia. And then he was assigned by the government, by the president, to go to Fort Hueneme in California. He never got his absentee ballot. Now, I got to tell you something. Soldiers are allowed to get an absentee ballot when they're assigned to another base. Even if you're a black soldier, believe it or not. Even if you're a black soldier. 2 days before the election, Major Turner calls up the county voting office in Columbus, Georgia, and says, "Where's my ballot? Where's my absentee ballot?" And they said, "Mr. Turner, you've been challenged." He said, "What does that mean? Someone challenged you." They wouldn't give the name. I can tell you the name. His name is Alton Russell. He's a Republican Party chairman in Southern Georgia. Not a government official. The Republican Party chairman challenged Major Turner and 4,000 other voters in Columbus. As far as we can tell, most of them were black soldiers sent to other bases. That's their trick. Yes, the GOP targets soldiers. They target the military. They target the military. That's not maybe. Okay? Because I have the names. So we called 800 of the people that were challenged. 800, if you're a statistician, that's a big sample. Overwhelmingly, black people were challenged. Overwhelming. That's how this game is played. And every single challenger that we found, and there are 40,000 of them, every single one was a white Republican activist or official. I'm not being racist by saying it's white people, and I'm not being partisan by saying it's Republicans. I'm being a reporter by giving you the facts, ma'am. Giving you the facts. Now, how did this happen? Well, it's Jim Crow's been here, but how the challenges happen, et cetera, because according to the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU, 30 states passed laws making it more difficult for voters, in particular voters of color, to vote. Now, for those people like Joe Biden who say that our elections are perfect, then let me ask you, Mr. Biden, why did Republican legislatures pass laws to make it harder for black people to vote? Are you saying that had zero effect, Mr. Biden? That had no effect? That's what I'd like to know. It did have an effect, and I'm measuring it. I'm measuring it here. That's what I do. That's what I take into federal court. That's what I do for a living when I'm not a reporter. My day job is doing these calculations. So if you have any questions, I'll answer them now.
Well, Greg, I want to make it clear. You're talking about the 2024 election.
Yep.
Which has been used to facilitate the ongoing coup d'etat on behalf of Donald Trump. And you are not a stranger to these issues. We first met after the 2000 election in Florida, where then Governor Jeb Bush disenfranchised, and you're the one who broke this story, some 90,000 voters of color, and in an election that was decided by 537 votes
In Florida,
officially.
yes.
It was challenged by the Congressional Black Caucus. At the time, I think there were 19 U.S. reps in the Black Caucus, and that challenge was refused by then Vice President Al Gore, of all people, who strong-armed the Senate and refused to allow a constitutional challenge. You then joined us in Ohio 2004, where a lot of the similar stuff happened, and Bob Petrakis and I, along with Steve Rosenfeld and others, produced about 6 books, a lot of it based on your work in Ohio 2004. We saw similar stuff, especially in 2010, when the gerrymandering totally changed the composition of many state houses and the U.S. Congress. And then in 2017, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, where Hillary Clinton refused to join in to question the vote then. In 2020, we had a reasonably fair election, largely because of the mail-in votes on paper ballots. But now you're saying that 2024, about which we have not heard a peep from the Democratic Party, was not legitimate. Is that basically what you're saying?
Most of our elections aren't legitimate because of the poison of Jim Crow. I'm telling you, these are numbers from the government. I know someone cites the Cook Political Report for numbers. They're not an agency. We have a United States Elections Assistance Commission, whose job is to track America's dark little secret, which we don't count all the votes and we don't let every American citizen vote. And that's still the stain of Jim Crow and racism in America. Now, the number, I said that 13.8% of mail-in ballots don't get counted. That's NPR. I use a more conservative number than them. MIT says it's higher. Mail-in ballots are not a solution to anything. I would tell people never go postal if you can avoid it because of that massive disqualification of votes. And if you're Black, definitely don't mail in your ballot. They're looking for those ballots. They will disqualify them. As I said, the state of Washington, not Greg Palast, said 400% of mail-in ballots. There's a 400% higher probability your vote will be challenged and disqualified if you mail in your ballot if you're Black than if you're white. Now, what we have to do is deal with the fact that ballots are disqualified, especially paper ballots, which are very vulnerable. And, somehow people think if all you have to do is have a paper ballot and all our problems are solved. I'm sorry, take a look at the mail-in ballots. 2 million disqualified, and that's typical. Again, these are government figures. Provisional ballots, which are paper ballots, 1.2 million disqualified. Again, according to the federal government, not according to Greg Palast. So paper is not a solution. It's just another method that we have to protect. There is no safe method. One thing I didn't mention here, because I found no evidence of it, is you notice that I don't mention that Elon Musk changed the vote from outer space. I have no information on that. So, I don't know what he did or didn't do, but I can tell you this, these are hard numbers. These are hard numbers. Okay. And Joe Rogan may not like it, but these are the hard numbers.
All right, Greg, you're a national treasure. It's an honor to have you with us. And we got 94 people. Let's start with Nathan Taylor. Then we'll go to Mimi. I see Ray Lutz, your hand is up also, and John Seeley and Paul Newman. So Nathan Taylor first, please go ahead, and then Mimi.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Palast.
Good evening.
I do have a few questions for you. I love your work.
Sure. Thank you.
Specifically with suppression of mail-in votes. I do think that was a huge impact. And I've had hundreds of people, thousands of people reaching out, kind of saying, "Hey, my votes aren't showing as counted." So that was huge. But I did kind of want to briefly ask you kind of about your statement, as you just said, with any concerns with voting machines and how I think you had mentioned maybe that was a tinfoil hat conspiracy. And I do think, as you said, there is. It's very difficult to say anything substantial with Elon Musk. But so I'm Nathan Taylor. I am an executive director of the Election Truth Alliance. My background is cybersecurity and data analysis. I'm also a signal officer in the Army National Guard. And so I say to you, do you think there's any consideration about some of the recent findings that have been published by notable experts such as Ray Lutz, who's here with us, and John Brakey and Smart Elections, talking about potential manipulation of the voting machines, whether statistically or other concerns, specifically in Clark County, Nevada, or Washoe County, or Arizona, or Pennsylvania, or North Carolina. So have you seen, or do you think there's any validity worth checking deeper into those concerns?
Well, as an investigative reporter and investigator, I'm always for investigating. So the last thing I'm going to tell you is don't investigate. What I'm saying is that I haven't concentrated on it and I haven't found it. And I can 100% explain Trump's numbers through measurable vote suppression. I haven't seen anything which convinces me that Elon Musk messed with the voting machines. I think that the word that you used was potential problems. The numbers I gave you, 4,776,706 people purged, that's not a potential number. That's the number. When I said that 2.12 million mail-in ballots were disqualified, that's a number, not a potential number. So potential is, it could be there. Often where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't know, but I'm an investigative reporter, as you can see from my hat. And if I haven't investigated it, if I ain't investigated it, I ain't reporting it. So I'm not saying, and that's the other thing, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. It didn't happen. I'm just saying I don't have the information, and I can explain this election without recourse to guessing or suggesting something could have happened. I'm telling you what happened. Now, I do notice that about 7 people said BBC and the Cook Report and everyone else is saying Trump won Georgia by 115,000 votes. By the way, I was the chief BBC reporter on American vote suppression. So if you want to quote me to me, you can. Yes, I have said that the official result, and since you've quoted me to me, is that Trump won Georgia officially by 115,000 votes. That's after the effect of these vote suppression techniques. He won by 115,000 votes after 200,000 challenges by GOP operatives to voters. That includes a massive rejection of mail-in ballots. That includes, are you ready for this? The state of Georgia targeted 875,000 voters for a challenge. Now, just so you know, I went through their purge list twice with the experts that I hired, that are the experts for Amazon on saying where you live. And, Mr. Taylor, there's a lot of Nathan Taylors in America, but I bet Amazon does not send you someone else's tidy whities because they know where you live. And I hired the experts for the United States Postal Service. So between the post office and Amazon, they know where you live. And I had them go name by name through the Georgia purge list. And they gave me back a list of 198,000 names and addresses, not guessing, not estimating, not potential, not probably, no sampling. This is 198,000 names of people who were purged from the voter rolls for supposedly not living at their legal voting address. And they live exactly there at their legal voting address. Overwhelmingly, these are Black voters. And if you'll see in my film, Vigilantes Inc., again, stream that thing for free at gregpalast.com, Vigilantes Inc. You'll see Christine Jordan, 92 years old. I was at an Atlanta voting station. A lot of Black people are being thrown out of the station. Christine Jordan, 92 years old, was thrown out of the station after voting there 50 years because they said she didn't live in Atlanta anymore. I went down the street to her Atlanta house. There on the wall was a picture of Christine with her cousin from 50 years before at that house having dinner. Her cousin was Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I know some people have questioned me, and I'll tell you what, you go to Christine's house and you tell Martin Luther King's cousin that she is a fraudulent, felonious voter, and you make a citizen's arrest and cuff that old lady because we have to stop voter fraud. And I don't think so. So I have the people, I have the faces, I have the names and address. I did the same thing in Wisconsin, name by name by name on their purge list from 2020. Now, in that case, Black Voters Matter presented my material with their lawyers to the state of Wisconsin election board, and they stopped the purge in 2020. That's the only way that Biden won in 2020. Republicans had more influence on the board in 2024, and that same poisoned, felonious, wrongful purge was applied in 2024, and that's how Biden lost Wisconsin. Okay. It is. Wow. Now, if you want to tell me what the official numbers are, yeah, I know the official numbers. I'm not questioning the official numbers are officials by racist officials who practice Jim Crow tactics to keep voters off the voter rolls. And so this is what happened. So I'm giving you the numbers. If we didn't purge these legal voters, the 198,000 in Georgia that were wrongly purged, if we didn't challenge those 4,000 soldiers, only one got their vote. Major Turner actually flew to Georgia 5,000 miles to get his vote counted. He brought in Mark Elias, the lawyer from Washington, D.C. He went to federal court, got his one vote counted. 4,000 others didn't. Again, mostly black soldiers in the Fort Benning area. The challenges were 200,000 in Georgia, close to 2 million nationwide. I'm trying to get some of those numbers from the states, which are stonewalling me. These are the numbers we have. It's the best numbers. Again, when I said 317, a third of a million challenges by vigilantes by August, that's not from me. That's from the challengers themselves. Okay? The purge is from the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission. The provisional ballot rejection rate comes from the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission. It's not my numbers. So that's all I'm telling you.
Which I'm sure the Election Assistance Commission, I'm sure, will soon be defunded.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to remind people that Greg's film, Vigilantes Inc., you will get to see him. He goes to the house of a purger, a woman who, did she pull a gun on you? And she
didn't pull the guns. What happened was, so if you watch Vigilantes Inc., you'll see a Republican Party official dressed like Nancy Reagan in red and heels and the whole thing. And I was interviewing her on camera.
In her house.
In her Gone with the Wind mansion in Georgia. And she challenged 32,000 people. And she said that she was very proud of challenging 32,000 of her neighbors in Cobb County. And when I showed her pictures of her black neighbors in Cobb County that she challenged, I said, you know these people? She says, no. I said, but you challenged their right to vote. And she says, well, I can't call 32,000 people.
Right, but you
and
can
I said, but you could challenge the right to vote. Right. Then she threw me out of her house, and here was the problem. She had a loaded AR-15 next to the door. She had ammo stacked up to the ceiling, loaded guns all over the place. So I didn't argue with her. I did ask her if she was living at her legal voting address, but
there you go.
My crew, my local crew ran for their lives. I don't blame them.
Well, your local crew, as they say, was gone with the wind. We'll go to Mimi, Paul, and then Ray Lutz. We have 102 people with us, and we are being live streamed, by the way. And Greg, if you don't mind, I do want to take the recording of this and have it transcribed, and we'll put it up on Substack.
I'm counting on it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Mimi, go ahead. Our poet laureate, and then Paul Newman, who has donned a fedora in your honor. Go ahead, Mimi.
So let's just take the 875,000 voters challenged in Georgia.
They were purged. Yeah, they were marked for purge. Yes.
Purged.
There's two different things. I just want to let you know. I don't want to create confusion here. And if you go to my article, you get it. There are people who are purged from the voter rolls. That's done by the state. Then there are people who are challenged, and that's done by these individual self-appointed vigilantes, most of them working with True the Vote out of Texas. So they're two different groups. There was 200,000 challenges by non-government actors, and the government challenged 875,000 voters. I don't know what the final number was. I do know that we went through and found in the last list 198,000 people, which, by the way, we have the list by name and address and turned it over to the federal courts.
Okay, so the question I have, I really don't know the answer to this. Mm-hmm. So do the people who either get challenged or purged, is there a mechanism by which they are informed?
There's supposed to be, I call it in my article, I call it the poison postcard system. What they do is everyone on a purge list is supposed to get a postcard, or who's challenged is supposed to get a postcard within 30 days. Well, let me go through the state challenge. Their return rate, are you ready for this, of postcards is 1.2%. Basically, 1 out of 100 people notice the cards. They look like junk mail. My son picks up his mail from his school once a semester. Now, and people who have moved down the street, like especially lower income people will be renters. They'll move to within the same building. Students will move to another dorm room. By the way, if you're not supposed to be purged if you move within your same county, but they'll send a letter to an old address. They will send a letter. Anyway, it looks like junk mail. Almost no one responds to it. So it's a game. And every direct mail expert we've ever worked with, from Amazon, from the US Postal Service, says never, never, never use a postcard return as a measure of whether someone lives somewhere. That's just, it's ridiculous. In the case of the vigilante challengers, here's a problem. The state's supposed to notify people within 30 days. Well, under, for example, Georgia law, which they just changed, you can challenge someone's vote on election day. Well, if you do get the notice by some chance 30 days later, Trump's inaugurated. Trump's been certified. That's it. Over. So it doesn't matter. You can get all the cards and notices you want. In the case of Major Turner, he never saw a card. You know, so what happened is that he calls up and they say, you have to fly in and prove you are who you are. And that's really ugly racist business. As he says, I have to fly 2,700 miles to prove I'm a citizen again. And by again, he meant his family had to go through this in the civil rights era. His father, Reverend Harold Turner, as you'll see in the film, was a co-founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference with Martin Luther King. So he flew the 5,000 miles round trip. But who can do that? So what if you get a postcard? That don't help. You got to come in.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you, Greg.
Hey,
Paul Newman and then Ray Lutz.
Sluggo, real quick. I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat. All of them are answered by Greg's film, and he does an amazing job explaining it, proving these points. If you have any doubts about it, please watch the film, and you'll be glad and horrified that you did.
Okay, Paul Newman. Paul, thank you, Mike. Paul obviously has the same haberdasher as you, Greg Palast, but go ahead, Paul, please, and then Ray
Like
Lutz.
your hat, Paul. Turn on your sound, Paul.
Oh, yeah.
Unmute yourself.
Oh, my God.
Okay, yeah, they would.
Yeah,
I was waiting
okay.
for them to let me unmute. Anyway, we've met before. I've had dinner with you, and that's why I became a member of your fan club. So anyway, my question is this: there's an election coming up in Florida for 2 congressional seats.
Yes.
And the Democrats are running. We got a DOJ Pam Bondi, who's a total crony. What's going to happen? Are they going to rig the election against those two? And it'll even the House. I mean, it'll make the Congress even. And then when we get New York, we'll have the majority. Then the co-equal branches will have more power. So what do you think about this? Do you think Florida's going to try to mess with the election for those 2 Democrats?
Florida's always messed with the elections. Florida hasn't had an honest election since the Spanish Inquisition. Okay. So I know that I get attacked a lot, but I go back to Slugs. First I ran into Florida when I was at the Guardian BBC and uncovered that over 58,000 black men had been removed from the voter rolls. They were called felons. Not 1, 0 was a felon. And if it weren't for Paul Krugman, that would not have been in the New York Times. It still was. It was only in Paul Krugman's column and Bob Herbert, but he doesn't count because he's black. So this is Florida's game. And so, for example, Florida overwhelmingly passed a law saying if you do have a felony, they're one of the last states to still permanently remove your voting rights if you have a felony conviction. 65% of the Florida public voted to remove that restriction. I think it was 65%. You can check that.
It was very high.
It was pretty big. And Republicans and Democrats. But then the state added, but you have to make sure that your accounts are cleared of any fines or anything else. You have to understand the state doesn't even have the records. There's no way to check. So what happened is we have literally hundreds of thousands of Floridians who have the right to vote, who still have not received that vote because they're scared to death, I think rightly so, that someone will say, wait, you had a parking ticket or you had a court fee of $40 from the case you were in and you didn't pay it. So now you've committed the felony crime of voting illegally. So this is this is one of the tactics that's used in Florida. Now, someone said, we need mail-in voting to win in Florida. Absolutely. I am very, very, very much in favor of the right to mail in your ballot and also to have a drop box to put it in. That's very important because I can't tell you, Major Turner, who lost his vote to a challenge, a vigilante challenge, in the next election, he actually made a video for young soldiers that he was training saying, here's how you vote by absentee mail. And we have photos of him. If you go to my website, gregpalast.com, you'll see him filling out his mail-in ballot and showing it proudly. Here's how you fill it out. You fill it out, make sure you fill it out way in time. Guess what? He mailed that more than a week in advance, and they said it came in late and didn't count his ballot. Guess what? What color is Major Turner? Can you guess? No points. Exactly.
Wow.
So massive disqualification of mail-in votes, especially voters of color. Don't mail in your ballot if you can avoid it. But if you can't, like I'm on the road, I'm almost always on the road on election day. I have to mail in my ballot. The best is to vote. Don't wait for election day, man. Not only the lines, but if you have a problem with your registration, someone's challenged you, whatever, you don't have time to correct this. So please, the best way to vote is in person, early, if you can do it. If you can't, I'm not against mail-in voting. It's the GOP who's trying to stop it. And in places like Georgia, you ready for another little statistic? I could go on. I could write books about it, and I have, which is that they shut down 75 by law, shut down 75% of the voting machines in the Atlanta and Savannah counties.
Wow.
Which are the black counties. And in the white counties, they by law ordered an increase in the number of ballot drop boxes. So this is what's going on in these states. So there is plenty. Florida is one of the worst states to vote. The other states that are difficult to vote would be Texas, Georgia, and California. In a
Not to
primary.
mention Ohio.
Ohio may be Jim Crow Central. I've been in Ohio many times, and they are the ones who were the purge kings. This year Georgia purged more voters than any other state and got an award. Actually, got an award for it from the Heritage Foundation, the Project 2025 people, because they kind of jumped the 2025 gun and purged voters before. So yes, Trump's official victory is 115,000 out of 6 million ballots. And the answer is, that's what Jim Crow can do.
So Florida is under threat.
Absolutely. Florida is not under threat. Florida is completely race poisoned in its voting systems. Now, again, I don't even think it's because someone like DeSantis or I don't know who his latest Secretary of State hench person is, but they just don't like the color of black people's votes. And they know, and we tend to vote like the rest of the people in our precinct. That's how people vote. So they know what to do. Okay. And I saw this in Wisconsin. I saw it in Florida. I see it everywhere. And mail-in balloting, mail-in balloting absolutely favors Democrats. In fact, you'll see in my film, Ken Paxton, who's the Republican Attorney General of Texas, who escaped prison recently. He was impeached and charged for his crimes, but he got away with it. He may still be charged when he leaves office. We'll see. But Ken Paxton said, if I didn't stop mail-in voting in Houston, they were going to mail out ballots to everyone in Houston during COVID. This is back in 2020. Donald Trump, and this is a quote from the Republican Attorney General, Donald Trump would have lost Texas if they hadn't stopped the right of Houstonians to vote by mail. Right.
And of course, there's zero participation in this kind of work from the Democratic Party.
Well, some of it. The Democratic Party, the Harris County commissioner, but he's African American, so I don't know if he's a real Democrat. But he tried to get ballots sent out to the voters of Houston, and he was a Democratic leader. So not for those of you waiting for any political party, and I'm nonpartisan. I vote for Trump, vote for Harris. That's your choice. I just think that voters, not vigilantes, should pick the president. But yes, if you're expecting the Democratic Party to save your bacon, forget it. That's not their business.
We have a history of this kind of repression, and we'll go to Ray Lutz now, in the primaries, where Bernie Sanders was clearly the winner in the California primary a few elections back, and the
Would have
Democrats
been, yeah.
just completely raped and pillaged that one. Okay, 102 people with us. GREG PALAST is our guest, and Ray Lutz, who's been a guest many times, also a great.
And I'm going to have to jump off in a few minutes, but I definitely want to hear Ray. Okay, go ahead.
Go
Ray.
ahead, Burrow, please. And then we'll go to Hedy, John, and more. Go ahead.
Well, of course, I'm a super big fan of everything you do, Greg, and I really appreciate how much detail you put into, or work you put into, to making sure that you're getting the right numbers. And I always wonder, like, how much of the purges you hear about that, or how sometimes the complaints from the Republicans that they found 60,000 or something, that bad people on the voting rolls, and some of those people have just moved away maybe and were legitimately okay to take off. But my real questions are, your research really doesn't detail how many mail ballots are sidelined through some sort of activity by, say, DeJoy and other people like that, right? I mean,
all I have is the net number, which is, I think NPR is correct at 13.8% of mail-in ballots rejected. That's above my number, but below MIT. So it's about 1 in 7 ballots, but that's the whole ball of wax. Like I said, major turnout.
Those are the ones they admit to, right?
Those are the ones that I said that were found by myself, MIT, and the NPR investigation.
Okay, I'll have to look into that because I'm curious. And then my other question is, how much do you think same-day registration thwarts these scams? Maybe a little bit, or do you think it's because I often refer to that as a way out?
Well, two things. If you have same-day registration, you are in a state, you are no longer subject to the Voting Rights Act. Let me read the National Voter Registration Act, I should say. So again, if you say that you have same-day voter registration, one of the problems is that in states like Wisconsin, and they'll say you're purged off the voter rolls, you can't vote. Some states actually prohibit you from saying, by the way, you have the right to register today. I think one of the things that we should do as activists is inform people that if you've got a problem, just say, I want to register right now, and then give me a ballot. I think that is important. I think it's So these are good questions. Go ahead.
So what does that mean that you're not in the Voting Rights Act? What implications?
The National Voter Registration Act does not apply to states which have same-day registration, because the idea is that if a state racially or illegally messes with your registration, you can just re-register on the spot, assuming you've brought all your right ID and proof of address, etc.
So even if they don't have same-day registration, you still theoretically can do that. Is that right?
So if you don't have same-day registration, you're subject to the National Voter Registration Act, but that doesn't seem to bother most of these states at all.
Okay.
Georgia's subject to NVRA, but they don't care. I mean, it is a total Jim Crow operation.
Great work. We got to keep working on this. Appreciate it.
Well, unfortunately, I have to bounce because I made a promise to Rick Smith, and there was a conflict of time here. So please, and
Greg,
by the way, I can come back another time. I also have my great AP on the line, Patrice Gallagher. And so she can maybe answer some questions if I can't.
Okay,
but please go to gregpalast.com. Okay, thank you so much.
Greg, I'm going to get a commitment from you. You and I will talk. You'll give us another date. John, CB, Buckley, Hedy, Patrice. We'll call on Patrice here. Mimi, everybody, you all get passes, and when Greg comes back, I'll negotiate a time. You'll be first with questions. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to monopolize so much of your time. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
That's what you're getting the big bucks for. We really appreciate. We got 107 people with you, and we live broadcasted. You're saying that Patrice is your go-to person here. We'll continue.
Yes, and she was with me in Georgia. She's our new assistant producer, and she might not have all the answers, but she can direct you back to our site. So thank you. Okay.
All right, Greg, you'll be back with us. Everybody thank you, Greg, and go out and ride that 90-foot wave. Patrice, let's take it up with you. Greg will come back and answer questions from everyone at his next point. So we'll give you guys hall passes. Patrice, if you'll start with my buddy HEDY TRIPP, then we'll go to John, is that a CB Buckley there? And did you get that hat to go to see Wicked, or what's the deal here? And then Mimi, we'll go to Mimi as well, Mimi SS. So Patrice, please, can you talk to my buddy Hedy here? Wait, you're muted. Hold on.
Muted.
Okay, go ahead, Patrice and Hedy.
Patrice is talking, but I'm not hearing her.
Oh, hey, hold on, Patrice. There.
Yeah.
Oh, the echo chamber. Try again.
How about now?
You have a cell phone on or something?
Nope.
Ah, try again there.
Okay.
I don't know.
Headset might help.
Greg in the other room? If
Yeah,
Greg's
turn that off.
his computer,
Hold on, maybe.
Come on my phone.
That's why it's, you got to either turn off the thing or turn off your phone. You can't have both. All right, she's disappeared on us. Maybe she'll come back. Hedy, is that a picture behind you of downtown St. Cloud, Minnesota, or are you at the beach?
That's just my fantasy at the moment. But
Okay, well, hopefully Patrice will be right back with us. We have John SEELEY, CB Buckley, and Mimi, and we have Victoria Alexander entering the room. I don't know if that's Patrice or not. Patrice, is that you? Everybody, Greg did have to go. I'm so sorry, but we'll run through this till the end of the hour, and then when Greg comes back, you'll all be first to hear. Let's see if Patrice is coming back. I know that Patrice has been working with Greg and may be able to answer some questions. Patrice, oh, there you are. Okay, ask to unmute. Patrice, let's get you unmuted. Oh man, this is the worst part of the job here, is trying to get people to unmute. Steve, can we get her unmuted?
Yeah, generally, if they're co-hosted, they can unmute themselves. So she is co-hosted. I just see
Okay.
there's two instances. Let me start the other one.
Yeah, while we're working that out, CB Buckley, could you unmute and tell us what's going on? You're part of the
Wait,
world.
Hedy. There we go. Patrice is back. And
Okay.
are you all right?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no
Okay.
echo.
Yay. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Hedy and Patrice, you're together then.
And
John SEELEY and
excuse me
CB
just a
and
minute.
Mimi.
Excuse me just a minute. Greg didn't know that I have a village board meeting soon, but I'm going to stay on as long as I can. Go ahead, Hedy.
okay, very quick.
Yes.
When Greg was saying that voter suppression targets Black folks in particular, what he may really mean is that they're targeting communities of color, particularly Black communities, right? Now, I'm looking at Al Jazeera's information on Wisconsin, and there was a 13 percentage point shift of Black votes towards Trump. And I've seen other information describing that the Black votes for Trump came mainly from male Black voters. And I was wondering, if you or Greg had anything to say about that.
I can't speak to that exactly, but I do know that Milwaukee, Wisconsin was severely targeted. Who would think Milwaukee, Wisconsin? But mainly the voter purging and challenging, especially challenging through AI, originated with our friend Brian Slaveholder Kemp out of Georgia.
Yeah, and of course, Milwaukee would be a huge deal because Wisconsin was one of the 7 sacred swing states, and Milwaukee would. Now, Hedy is in Minnesota. I guess Minnesota snuck through. Is that right, Hedy?
No, but we were fighting to keep a trifecta, and that's being challenged. So I think now it's like 67 to 67 instead of a Democratic House.
And in addition about Milwaukee, I can't remember who, because I'm fairly new to GREG PALAST team, but a billionaire, you guys might know, poured a ton of money into Milwaukee.
And who was that?
I can't remember his name. Greg would
Okay.
know, of course.
All right. Well, Patrice, I hope when Greg comes back, you will too, and be his supporting team. Hedy, and Patrice, you should know that Hedy has done a lot of work with women of color over the decades, and is a very important organizer. So,
Excellent.
thank you, Hedy. Is there anything else you wanted to ask?
No, we will give other folks a chance.
Okay. CB Buckley, I know you've just gotten back from seeing The Wizard of Oz. Would you want to ask something of Patrice, and then we'll go to John Seeley?
I think my legs are still poking out from under the house. Telling me.
Are you
Yeah,
the Wicked Witch of the North or the East?
Well, the question is she a good witch or a bad witch?
I'm a good witch. In spite of the blackness, see, I speak out of both sides of my mouth now.
Black is beautiful.
Black is beautiful. Indeed, it is. I'm going to mention something that Hedy mentioned because I'll put in information there. I saw the Vigilantes Inc. and I learned very carefully. And what Greg had mentioned is that the lists that he got had a BLA in it. So he wasn't just targeting communities. When the person's specific name came up, they knew if they were Black, Latino, or Asian. So therefore, they could easily target those people, and he was able to personally then verify. So that, I just want to mention that.
Thank you. Yes.
Certainly.
Okay. CB,
Anyway.
do you go by CB? Is that what we call you? Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to ask, Patrice?
Yes. Well, actually, this is not as much a question. I just want to mention something. Again, I saw Vigilantes Inc. thanks to PDA. Thank you. I also saw Greg interviewed on Status Coup. Thank you for going on there too. But what I am thinking is I totally believe and in my heart that this is what happened, that there was voter suppression because Trump talked about it. Everybody, all of the states were going into it hardcore. But what I want everybody to remember and think about is even though it probably would have been Kamala Harris, even though it could have very easily been a whole different scenario, the voters, as they came out, the rationale for their voting for Trump, and I mean, the exit polls were very firm that this is something where the Democrats did not address the economy, did not address a lot of the concerns of the Democrats. So I don't want anybody to take this as ammunition to say, see, everything was fine, that what the Democrats were doing was fine, the world is wonderful. Do not use this as an excuse to not look at the fact that we have had problems, that we do need to make changes, and that something does need to happen. But yeah, I mean, I totally believe this because I've seen it myself. I've worked on campaigns. I know what goes on, and yeah, but thank you. I just want everybody to keep this in mind. Our economy is not good, and that's not something that was addressed before. The people do have concerns, and we do need to continue to address those concerns. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Patrice, you want to say something to that before we go to John Seeley?
Agreement.
Sorry?
I'm in agreement.
Okay, very good. John Seeley, we need to unmute you. And you are also wearing a hat, but it's not a fedora for those in the radio audience. Okay, go ahead, John Seeley.
Well, I think Greg's done tremendous work over the years, and it's, invaluable, but I don't think it, necessarily goes as far as to prove or even make it likely that Kamala won the election. Now, I'd like, I don't know whether Patrice wants to address this, but I do not understand the theory of how, when, for example, in Michigan, the Democrats control the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the governorship, the large counties, and the chair of the Democratic Party is Black. How do we get away with voter suppression? And why can't they defend against it? Ditto pretty much in Pennsylvania. where, you know, we have had a Democratic governor, attorney general, and the Democrats are in charge of the election machinery in all the large counties where most of the minority people live, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh.
Great question, John. You don't name all the cities in Pennsylvania. Let's get an
Okay,
answer.
thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks,
No,
Mike.
we got the idea there, John. Very good. Stay with us, Patrice.
So,
You want to answer that?
how does this happen?
Well, it's my understanding, my experience that when you're challenged and or purged, especially challenged, and who even knew anybody could be challenged? When we're challenged, especially through that AI, you don't know you're being challenged. You don't know you're being purged. So if you don't know you're being challenged, you're being purged, your vote's not going to count. So it doesn't matter who's in.
Why don't the Democrats know who's being challenged since they're running the election offices?
You don't know you're being challenged.
No, why don't the Democratic officers know?
Well, that's something we've got to work on.
Well, let's just say Mike Hirsch and I were talking about this. You know, there's a tradition, certainly since 2000 and 2004, between Al Gore and John Kerry, and then 2016 Hillary Clinton, of the Democratic candidate disappearing after the election. You know, John Kerry famously, we briefed John Kerry about irregularities in Ohio 2004, and he had $7 million in a fund to investigate irregularities.
But Harvey, we're not talking about after the election. We're talking about
and
before.
Well, the day after the election, with all this money, he did no challenges, no investigation, and went windsurfing. And in 2016, Jill Stein came in with Bob Fitrakis to Michigan and got a judge to rule that there had to be a recount. But it required her, you know, the Hillary Clinton, who was a potential winner, the ruling was that since Jill Stein couldn't win, the request for the recount had to come from a potential winner, i.e. Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton declined to have a recount. Now, in 2024, with the GREG PALAST and Ray Lutz raising these issues, and Stephen Spoonemore and Lulu Friestad, Kamala Harris has completely disappeared. I mean, you have to wonder, did Kamala Harris run for president, or was that a hologram? You know, she's completely disappeared, as if she never ran. So there is this syndrome, and after 2020, Donald Trump did not disappear, you know, the question then is, what are we dealing with here? You raised the issue, John, of the role of the Democrats. Patrice, is there any indication in your research that the Democratic Party has shown any interest in the issues that Greg has raised here, or that Ray Lutz has raised?
Zero.
Okay, that's ZERO, correct? Okay, great.
And Slugger, real quick, John Seeley raises a very important point, and we've kind of addressed it, but not completely to his satisfaction. John is asking, why aren't the Democrats doing more to stand up against these voter purges when they have all this institutional control in these states? And that's a very good point. If I could remind everybody, when Howard Dean was the chair of the DNC, he was about to go on all the Sunday morning talk shows and accuse the Republicans of doing all of this chicanery, vote switching, voter suppression, this, that, and the other. And what happened was people in the DNC took him aside and said, the problem with that is if it's hard enough for us to get our people to vote. And if the word gets out that their vote is not going to count, then they won't turn out at all. Now, I'm not sure that that's that convincing to me, but it was definitely convincing to Howard Dean. And that's the groupthink that dominates the Democratic Party. So, John, I know this is not the answer you want to hear,
well,
but this is what Greg said, what Patrice said and what Sluggo is itemizing. And if I can just summarize it, do not expect the Democratic Party to do diddly poo when it comes to defending rights to vote. It's just the saddest thing that you can say. Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, and since then they pretty much checked out and gone to sleep. It's a Rip Van Winkle party when it comes to all this. And we had Merrick Garland, who was a Rip Van Winkle when it came to everything.
Everything.
You know, I think he was like the what was it? The groundhog must have seen the shadow and went back to sleep. But
Well,
you know, well, this is not an answer that John or any of us want to hear. But this is something that we've got to do for ourselves.
Well, let me document this. First of all, I'm going to disagree with you, Michael. The Democrats do diddly poo. That's exactly what they do. And there's two major instances. In 2000, when GREG raised the issue of the massive disenfranchisement in an election decided by 537 votes in Florida, the Black Caucus of the U.S. Congress demanded there is a constitutional clause that says if one senator and one representative raise a challenge to a state's electoral delegation, there has to be a 2-hour meeting, a joint session of Congress to discuss it. So Al Gore, who was presiding over the joint session of Congress, confronted with 20 or thereabouts members of the Black Caucus, strong-armed every U.S. senator on the Democratic side to not join the challenge. This is the guy who just lost the election, allegedly. We know the later vote counts show that he, in fact, did legitimately carry Florida. And the Democratic Party response was to scream at Ralph Nader for the next 20 years, who had nothing to do with it. So there's Al Gore killing the challenge to clearly an illegitimate electoral delegation. In 2004, I was in Columbus, Ohio, worked with Bob Petrakis. We knew the people. We knew John Kerry's people in Columbus. We presented him with what became 6 books worth of fraudulent behavior in the Ohio 2004 election, which decided the election in the Electoral College. And the response of the Democrats was to say exactly what you said, that we don't want to raise issues about the vote count because then people won't come out to vote. And the Democratic Party refused to, really attacked us. We published all sorts of stuff claiming irregularities in the 2004 Ohio election, and no Republican ever cared. They just didn't care. They just blew us off. The Democrats were the one who yelled at us for challenging the 2004 election in Ohio, by which the Democratic Party lost the presidency. So you tell me. I mean, what are we dealing with here? I have no idea. Okay, Mimi, and then Michael McMillan, and then we'll go back to Ray and LYNN FEINERMAN.
And I think Greg's back on. Are you all here, Greg?
Greg, you back with us? Well, maybe
He's
somewhere.
trying to get in. He's trying to get in.
Oh, all right, okay. Well, we have 109 people with us. And who did I just call on? Mimi, right? Mimi and then Michael, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
That's it.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Mimi and Michael.
This is Mimi S. Thank you so much for organizing this call today and always. My local Indivisible group in San Jose, California wanted to have a big community screening of Vigilantes Plus just before the election, but we got too busy canvassing, organizing, then curing. So we were waiting. Would this be a good time, Mr. Palast, to invite you to come and speak with us? And there's even folks from the NAACP and the HBUC Alumni Association interested in this event. So that's why I saw your thumbs up. Thank you so much. And so I share John Seeley's and other people's frustrations. Where I live in my county, I live in Seeley Valley, California. I think you all know what I mean by that. Yeah. Our 2 DNC representatives are people of color, right? So people of the global majority. So should I voice a complaint to them or encourage other people to complain to them? Unfortunately, one of them is a county supervisor, so he's pretty busy What would you all suggest
Well,
on that?
you're in the Simi Valley. Greg, are you coming back to LA anytime soon?
Yes. My erstwhile home is still in Los Angeles, but for those, by the way, can people hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, you're good.
I wanted to mention, and Patrice can help you too, or you go to gregpalast.com and it says contact Greg. And what we have is we have Blu-rays, we have DVDs, we have high quality downloads, we have the special equipment you need for movie theaters, streaming, whatever you need to have community meetings and show the film Vigilantes Inc. It's entertaining. and we've had many community groups, some big and some connected virtually, including I had a showing twice with the PDA online. Rainbow Push has had a showing which is connected to their 3,500 church cable operation, but it could just be 12 of your friends in a room. I recommend you invite everyone, including your NAACP, local NAACP people. Let's make this once again a community thing, and not only invite your Democratic leaders, invite the Republican leaders. Not all of them are dishonest, and maybe they need to learn something, about this system. Don't assume. We don't have to be partisan about this. This is about American rights, not about Democratic rights. This is about the rights of Americans to vote. So let's invite everyone in. But the important thing is to educate people, because you just have to unstupid people. You just got to give them these numbers. And the thing is about the reason I push the film is you get to meet people like Major Turner, who was removed from the voter rolls. You meet his family. You meet Christine Jordan King's cousin, who was thrown out of the polling station. You get to meet the people, and you get to meet, by the way, the perps too. The crazy Republican Party vote challenger. Again, he's a vice chairman of the party. He's on the state committee, and he dresses up like a vigilante, like Doc Holliday with a loaded 6-gun. That was not too pleasant, I can tell you. And so you want the story. Let's have meetings. Let's have discussion. And to the extent it's not easy for me to travel around to make personal appearances all over the planet all the time, I do my best, but I can usually arrange, if you do the date right, where I can come in by Zoom and answer questions and talk to people. We have posters. We have material to help you promote such events. Education is where we have to start. If people don't know, you can't call the cops on a thief if you don't know that your pocket's been picked. So you need to know that your vote's been picked, and you need to know how it's done.
Well, what you don't know will hurt you. Michael and Amelia, were you done?
I'm so sorry. I live in Silicon Valley. I said
Silicon Valley. I get there too.
So that's my fault. That's my fault. So thank you so
much. You can have an event in Silicon Valley with all the billionaires that were at Trump's inauguration.
I'm not friends with
admission. Charge $100 million admission. That will work. Okay, Michael McMillan, please, and then I think Lynn and Julie were up, but go ahead, Michael, please.
All right. Hi, can you hear me okay?
We're good. We're good.
All right. So I wanted to address the question of why even in municipalities where you have African Americans in positions to impact the vote or to address voter suppression. It's because they're dedicated to their personal careers and they adhere to the donors, not the voters. The senior leadership in the Democratic Party is more beholden to the donors and not to the voters. And this has been an ongoing issue. You can look at how even in the Black church, preachers are paid off to change positions and to go with, where the money is coming from. If you look at when the Voter Rights Act was gutted, it was gutted under Obama, and I believe Eric Holder was Attorney General. Other than a brief statement, they did nothing. And that's because the donors are more important, not the voters. They think that they can, scare people enough that they will override that discrepancy in the percentage difference. And so that's what I wanted to say on that issue. You cannot assume because a person is African American that other than their own self-interest, they will override that.
Greg,
thank
you want to jump in on that?
Just make an interesting side note. The Reverend Jesse Jackson actually met with President Biden and Kamala Harris a few weeks before the election. Gave them my film. They know me. They said, listen, you got to look at Greg's new film. But most important, you have to do something about it. They are scared to death of dealing with what is seen as a racial issue. You know, that they don't want to be seen as the black party. And this is particularly true this time. Yes, it was, you know, Barack Obama had control of both houses of Congress. It was the time to re-up and make permanent the Voting Rights Act of 65. In addition, you know, and again, I would like, you know, I'd like to see the Democratic Party or others get behind it, and some of our officials of any color get behind it. But I found working with NAACP and Black Voters Matter and Rainbow Push and Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, the Latino frontline group, that's where we're going to save our votes. And I agree, you're not going to get establishment leaders who are elected by the current voter rolls and the current system. In other words, you would have a very different Democratic Party if everyone got to vote. That party would change. So that a lot of these people, remember, you got the party of incumbency, which isn't too comfortable about correcting our voting system that elected them. And obviously, you know, they're, you know, you, like I said, Biden, they are so afraid. They put people who talk about vote suppression, which is a real measurable, you can see it on camera. I'm there at the polling stations. People are being thrown out. I'm right there. I've got them on camera. I've got the people that do it, the perpetrators on camera. Yet hard to get into the media and impossible after an election because you're thrown in with the Trump and their election deniers. No, I'm not denying an election. I'm trying to blow the whistle on the people that denied us a democratic election.
Well, I want to point out also, since we are nonpartisan here, that if the reforms that you're talking about, Greg, and if this incredible concept that everybody might actually get a vote that gets counted, probably in 2016 and again in 2020, the Democratic nominee would have been Bernie Sanders. And you know, that I don't think I need this anymore, right?
Well, you know, there was I wrote it. You can go to gregpalast.com and look up Sanders, and I did an expose for Democracy Now! On how Hispanic voters in particular, because they have a system in California. It's like the tricks played by the parties are very interesting. In the case of California, for example, you're told that if you have no party preference, that is an independent voter, you can still vote in the Democratic Party, and that's just not true. It's almost impossible to vote in the Democratic Party if you are not a registered member of the party. That way, most people in California are registered as non-party preference, independent. If you try to vote in the Democratic Party primary, good luck. And this is the way that they knock out young people, progressives, and especially Hispanics who are very much in the last race were for Tio Bernie. So both parties do it. I saw this happen in New Mexico, where Democratic Party played games with provisional ballots in the Acoma Pueblo. All politics is local. And the Democratic leadership of the county wanted a uranium mine. The people in the Pueblo did not want the uranium mine because the last uranium mine poisoned their children, destroyed their fields. Democratic Party sent them mail-in provisional ballots and mail-in ballots, which they sent back. But they were given by the government the wrong envelopes, and then the county government, which sent the wrong envelopes to the Pueblo, disqualified all the ballots, saying they were in the wrong envelopes. So the Democrats can play these games too.
Yes,
but again, it's mostly against other Democrats. It's usually in the primaries, and you know, that doesn't make it even. I'm not one of these people say on one, you know, all parties do it, they're all the same. They aren't, because the Republican Party has taken Jim Crow into cyberspace. These challenges, in fact, one of the challenge groups besides True the Vote is called Eagle AI, which was founded and directed by Cleta Mitchell, Trump's lawyer. And Eagle AI uses artificial intelligence to challenge voters. They challenged 10,000 people in Philadelphia, at least. That was months before the election. I don't know what the final number was, But again, they were doing these challenges using AI. Now, if someone's an illegal voter, they shouldn't be voting, but then arrest them. If they really have illegal voters, put them in prison. Don't take, if you rob a bank, they don't close your bank account. So it's a real, oh, look at this guy was deported and he's still on the voter rolls. You mean Jose Hernandez? Really? Jose Hernandez was deported? Gee, you found a Jose Hernandez in Atlanta and then he voted again in Arizona? Even though they're different middle names, doesn't matter. This is the games that are being played. And I appreciate your bringing this up. Yes. It's
LYNN FEINERMAN, let's go to people who haven't talked yet. Ray, I don't know if you have a hand or not, but LYNN FEINERMAN and Julie, go ahead, please, Lynn.
Yes, hi. I am wondering, because it's very clear locally and nationally that the Democratic establishment just doesn't do this work. I'm wondering if we could approach the Squad, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and begin to really push them on this issue, because, you know, these neck and neck elections are just completely fake. And, you know, I'm not surprised that they went after Greg for, you know, trying to call on election fraud, because they're screaming about it all the time, just so he won't be able to have a valid voice, or a voice that is thought of as valid. Which brings me to my last thing, and that is, in order to get the movie out further, has anybody done any legwork on getting it nominated for an Oscar?
Unfortunately, we didn't make it on the Oscars. An Oscar campaign, just so you know, costs at least $1 million. It's like a political campaign. And probably for my next film, it'll be a lot easier because my producer is Leonardo DiCaprio. So, we didn't make the Oscars, but you mentioned the Congressional Black Caucus. They have actually done quite a bit of work. I do work with the Congressional Black Caucus, and they're planning a showing of the film. Jonathan Jackson, the congressman, and Jasmine Crockett are planning to host a showing at the Congressional Black Caucus. They're not my problem. The problem we have is the Congressional White Caucus. They need to attend. I've only seen, you know, by the way, there's no color line for you don't have to be a certain color to be in the Black Caucus. The first time I went there to present to some of my material, there was this big, tall, white guy, Bernie Sanders there. He's a member of the Black Caucus. Well,
he's Jewish. That counts.
That counts. He's almost there. So he can't sit at either end of the bus, right? So the issue is that we do have to, you're right, get it out there, take it to your Democratic clubs, your Republican clubs, take it to your Indivisible as taking part in these things. There's a lot of groups. Again, we're more than happy to get DVDs in people's hands, work with organizations to get the film shown. And again, you have that longer piece. It's a little bit complicated. There's a lot of numbers in it that the one Trump lost, but do spread it around, do spread out the links. And we have, you know, short videos as well. One narrated by Yvette Nicole Brown on these vigilante voter purges, which we have at gregpalast.com. We can send you short films to put out. And any way we can help the organizations get this information. We are nonpartisan, and I take that really seriously. I'm just trying to let the voters vote.
Well, when we had a after 2004, we had a hearing in D.C. that was convened by John Conyers through our great friend Joel Siegel, and I did sit next to Bernie, and I'm happy to report that he was really grumpy.
He is.
So, anybody hears those reports that Bernie is grumpy, 100% true. Julie Weiner, go ahead, please, Julie.
Yeah, two things. I want to confirm the experience of the Democratic Party suppressing the vote. I was part of the Bernie campaign in 2016 in the primary and had the painful experience of poll watching at SUNY Purchase, and the young people, the children, listen to me, I'm so damn old. The the students had the had registered like, back in February, and at least one student had checked the night before to make sure that she was registered. And then they got to the polling place and there were like 70 people whose names weren't there. And the kids were crying. It was such a hostile environment. They really, and half of them, their address had been changed to off campus, and there are no cars allowed on campus, so they couldn't get to the other polling place. It was really, there were 70 complaints filed which we were involved in helping file with the Board of Elections, and there was no response to the complaints.
And I got to
And I
say
would
that-
like a short film. Maybe we can show it at our Indivisible chapter. I see my fellow.
All right, be in touch with Greg and with Patrice. Patrice, it's nice to meet you, by the way. But this great guru, Mark Elias, who's supposed to be such a hotshot on election. I mean, right after this election, this fall, he just immediately said, no challenges, nothing to see here. And Greg, have you had any personal contact with Mark Elias?
Yes, but a lot of that is legal confidential.
Okay.
He did represent Major Turner, who I spoke of earlier, who was challenged by these vigilantes, but he failed to get the court to, they let Major Turner vote because he flew 5,000 miles, but they didn't let anyone else vote that was challenged. And so I don't know why the party didn't pick up the gun, the cudgel on to take on the rest of these voter vigilantes. But that was done. Look, the job fell ultimately to the NAACP and the great Gerald Griggs, their president in Georgia, and C.K. Hoffler, great attorney. We've had some very, very good people mount these challenges. The challenge is it's just very difficult. In federal courts, they say you're too premature. It's very difficult to pull off. But it would have been nice if Mark Elias had joined us. And, I can imagine that there were fires all over the country. And he had as far as I could tell, a very small operation and staff, despite the billion plus in the Democratic coffers. So I'm not going to blame Mark Elias. He's doing his bit. It's direction from the top. And that's the real issue. But again, I keep, I'm going to tell you again, if you're relying on any political party, Democrats or Greens or anyone else to save your vote, that ain't going to happen. Right. You save your vote, take part with the activist voting rights organization, spread around the messages, spread around the links, spread around the films, spread around the story, because look, the voting rights movement of the 60s was not promoted by the Democratic Party until they had no choice. I mean, it was the Democratic Party, which was the party of Jim Crow. So when they did switch, but they were forced to switch. That's all. Right. When the public gets ahead of them, then the leaders will follow when the public gets ahead.
Well, it's like that statement from Will Rogers that he said, I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a Democrat. We have someone new. Julie, did you want to add?
Yeah, there was just one more quick thing. If there
go ahead, Julie.
Mickey, if there are people from New York State listening, or if you know people in New York State, there's a budget bill there's a proposal to add to the governor's and the legislature's budget to ban DREs and to require hand-marked paper ballots in polling places, which would save the state, county by county, it would save the state $250 million in election costs if the Express Vote Excel is not allowed to be used in elections, which does not allow the use of hand-marked paper ballots in polling places. So as a budget resolution, it would give $250 million more, $250 million more to the states, and prevent the near doubling of the costs of our elections. 75%
Julie, how can people get involved?
Oh, please. Thank you for asking. Please go to citizensvotingny.org and sign up or join NYCD 16 Indivisible and join the Election Integrity Committee.
And
but it's easier to find citizensvotingny.org and give us your contact information and we'll get back to you.
And do you have an estimate of how many kickbacks the politicians might lose out on if this goes down?
Yeah, I have no idea, but it's very curious that we can't get it. We can't get a hearing in the New York State Assembly's Election Law Committee. So I
It's
imagine, but well, it's not all that amazing or surprising because the former chair of the Election Law Committee is now working for ES&S's lobbyist, David Off.
The revolving door spins
Yeah.
again.
Right.
Yeah.
We have
And
114
he's good
people.
buddies with, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks
Go
so
ahead.
much, Julie.
You're
Julie,
welcome.
Ray Lutz had I don't know if you disappeared. We have 114 people with us. I'm going to go to Mickey in a minute, but ERINNE Rochelle is new. Mickey, if you just let a new person, let me get her unmuted, and then we'll go to Mickey Leader. ERINNE Rochelle, you're new. Do you want to say hi? And then we'll go to Mickey and then to Alex Williams.
Hi, everybody. ERINNE Rochelle. I'm out of Houston, Texas. I wanted to ask the guest, and I'm going to preface this question by saying I am a fraud investigator. I've been investigating fraud since 2017. I am a certified fraud investigator, and I dived really deep into the employment fraud that occurred during the 2020 pandemic. And I'm not going to name the state, but one particular state, which is key of the 2020 election and that actually led to Donald Trump losing, had exponential amount of unemployment fraud. This state lost $250 million easy. The cases that I investigated was a little over 100 million. So I wanted to ask you, sir, did you ever or have you looked in your research the fraud or suppression measures on a micro level, not a macro look, not an overall look? I'm talking about literally a micro level where you've seen possible, I don't know, groups of people that might have turned in ballots that would not have passed due diligence in any other setting. And this is specifically in 2020 because this particular state scrapped all their due diligence laws regarding the validation of their ballots. So I just wanted to know if you had any information or if in your research, if you found any validity to a fraud claim for 2020.
In terms of people filling out ballots illegally, ballot stuffing, it's like, filling out wrongful ballots and putting them in ballot boxes. I know that True the Vote and Trump accused people of that. It didn't happen. I've been in the field 25 years. I haven't seen it one single time out of billions of ballots. Not one single time. I certainly have looked for it. Not once.
Do you, ERINNE,
Never.
do you look into forgeries?
I look in it all, yes. And the reason why I wanted to ask you that was because if this state was this lax giving out appropriating money, I mean, I was looking at cases where people in Puerto Rico, Hawaii.
Did you look at the ballots? It's a very different system.
Well, this is the reason why I asked you, because people like me, unfortunately, I mean, out of this state, unless I'm in the state, I wouldn't have been able to have. I don't have the resources that you do regarding investigative research. I'm only limited to what my current employer or project allows me access to, and it's usually something like LexisNexis. And remind you, this is financial fraud. And the reason why I asked was because if this state was so lax in their due diligence process when it came to appropriating unemployment funds, is it fair to think that they might have been just as lax when it came to due diligence in making sure that their ballots were actually legal?
Let me split two things. Okay, number one, you're saying, is the state lax? And every state I've looked at is beyond lax, is worse than lax.
Okay,
there was tremendous financial fraud in 2020. No question. I witnessed it. I saw it. Okay, no question. Zero. You're correct about that. As to ballots, let's split two things. Are we talking about because you then said, is the state lax? Yes, I told you that we gave the state of Georgia 198,000 names and addresses of people that they had wrongly purged from the voter rolls. Now, you could call it lax. You can call it deliberate scheme to knock off voters they don't like. I don't know which it is. I mean, I can't tell, given the pattern. That is, they never make an accident knocking off too many white voters. So I tend to think it's systemic and systematic, but it could also just be lax and sloppy too, or as I call it vulture opportunism. I can tell you, for example, when the state of the state of Florida knocked off tens of thousands of black felon voters, that wasn't how the plan began. But their algorithm knocked off those people. And then they looked at it and they said, well, why should we correct this? We got the result we wanted. So just like with the purges. So I don't know how much is deliberate, how much is lax, but don't confuse two very, very different things. One is voters filling out illegal ballots for which you go to prison, and you have state prison charges of 5 years and federal charges of 5 years. And I don't know not one single voter who's ever been caught, and there's only about 4 a year. That's it. Remember, we have billions of votes cast all over in many elections. Of the 4 a year who get caught, that's such a rare thing that someone sits there and deliberately fills out an illegal ballot, because you go to prison. They all go to prison. And the other thing is, but with the state, when it purges people, knocks people off, prevents them from voting, etc., it could be sloppy, or it could be just good old vicious Jim Crow. And they're not vicious in the old way. It's not like these people don't like black people. They just don't like the color of their vote.
Listen, Aaron, you should be in touch with Greg. Greg's not hard to get a hold of. And it sounds like you've got critical expertise that you two might be simpatico. So, Greg, if you'll go to gregpalast.com or org, Greg, I don't remember.
gregpalast.com. We are, though, despite .com, the Palast Investigative Fund is a 501c nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization.
Okay, I appreciate that. I will reach out to you because I would love to continue this discussion with
very
you
good.
to give you some more info. Thank you.
Aaron, and thank you for joining us, Aaron. It's always
Absolutely.
good.
I come as often as I can. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate it. MICKI Leader, I think you're in New York. MICKI, let's get you unmuted here. And then we have Alex Williams has been waiting patiently. So go ahead, MICKI, please.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
We're good. Please.
Okay, I had a real hard time getting connected. It took me almost a half hour. So
Yeah,
anyway,
just go ahead,
I
MICKI.
apologize if Julie already brought it up, but I'm part of a committee with Julie. And basically at this point, it's something that I didn't even know about 3 months ago, that the election machines, the scanners, are able to be hacked very easily. And I saw something that was...
Somehow you got muted here.
You're muted.
Wait, MICKI,
Why?
okay, go ahead.
Okay. I didn't touch it, so it just did
All
it
right,
on
go
its
ahead.
own. Okay. That the scanning of the ballots by the ESS and other Dominion machines are easily hacked. And Ray Lutz talked about it, and there's a bunch of other things that are just coming out now. Now, in our committee, we talked about why we can't get our New York State legislature, assembly people, and senators to even pay attention to the fact that this is going on. And Julie is much better at because I'm a novice in it. But in fact, we need ballots, paper ballots, and we can't take a chance on these machines. And she's the expert in knowing $250 million to go buy these machines. And then people are looking into who owns them. And at some point, it's so crooked, it's making you sick. And meanwhile, we could be doing everything we can to get people to be able to register and actually vote. What difference will it make if these crooks have already, with Musk, figured out the algorithms and the hacks to get into the little secret hole that you put into the ESS software container, and they manipulate it right, left, and center. So, we got to get them to wake up. And I just saw AOC sent a fundraising letter out about how we have to fight back. We have to this, we have to that. And I mentioned it in our call this morning. Why aren't we getting some of these very outspoken and charismatic people? And basically, she lives in New York, but hers is a federal election. Doesn't matter. They'll screw up every election they can. And they've been planning to do this for years, and they finally got Musk to do it. He's going all over the country doing it. And I just think we're spinning ourselves into into gold thread, trying desperately to get elections won, and we are not having people pay attention to this technology threat.
Thanks,
Greg?
Mickey.
Thank you, Mickey. Greg, you want to speak to that? Thank you.
My issue is measurable vote suppression. That is, I can look at the government figures. I can go to the polling stations. I can measure the number of people who've been thrown off the voter rolls, and I have their names and addresses. And I go to the polling stations and film them as they're being thrown out. And I film the people throwing them out. And I go to court as an expert on these matters. As to voting electronics and, what Musk can do from outer space, I don't know. It's not, I don't have that expertise. And,
Well, luckily,
and I haven't run
had,
into it. So it's not that's completely outside my realm. What I'm trying to do is convince, especially, and I'll be very blunt about it, I'm trying to convince white people to be concerned about black voter suppression. And so therefore I tend to be a bit monomaniacal and a bit repetitious, but I have to deal with what I can see and what I can stop. And I should tell you that with Reverend Jackson and some help from Indivisible and a lot of other good organizations, we did end the interstate cross-check program, which knocked off about 1 million people. I broke that story in Rolling Stone and Al Jazeera. And we saved 1 million votes. So it's practical. We can see it. All the other stuff, I don't know. Now I'm going to have to, it's pushing midnight here in Portugal, and I have to get, believe it or not, I have some work to do before the morning. And so I'm going to thank you so much. I didn't mean to monopolize so much time from you, Harvey, and for our wonderful guests. Go to gregpalast.com. You can see my name, gregpalast.com. Get the movie, sign up for the newsletters. I don't bombard you with a lot of stuff, and you rarely get a request even for money from me. I'm requesting it now. But if, please go to gregpalast.com, and I think Patrice will stay on and take some notes and pass them on to me. Thank you so much.
All right, Greg.
You guys
we'll
do great
back.
work. What a privilege and pleasure to be with activists. Thank you. Bye.
Well, this is the call in America that has the longest attention span. After more than an hour and a half, we still have 100 people with us. So thank you, Greg, and come back again. We'll talk about it. Okay, everybody, we're going to continue. Alex Williams and then Ray, I don't know if you have a hand or not. We've had a history of your hand not working. Have you had your hand up?
Well, it does sort of go up and down. I wanted to talk about the issue because it is sort of more my issue rather than the voter suppression, which is
Greg is the master of voter suppression, and Patrice, we're glad to have you with us. Go ahead, Ray Lutz, please.
Yeah, so I did send around, and I think it's an important thing to realize because the people that are aware of the computers that are being used, and generally it isn't always about computers, but any one of these computers can be hacked, especially the central tabulator, where it's usually just a computer like a laptop or something, and they have ports that you can plug into with a USB drive, and you can, these are sold around. Yeah, there you go. So I did send this around, and it's on my Substack. The experts that are aware of computer technology all agree that these computer systems can be hacked, okay, if you have access. And I was just amazed the other day because this little device was being advertised on LinkedIn. And It was, the testimonials were saying that it was, you know, virtually evil and that they should be ashamed of themselves. But there's a whole network I've come across before of people that make these things and specialize in them. And they are to the point where you can plug something like this in, and within just seconds, it will load itself onto the computer and make it available forevermore. And they even have on this one a color screen and so forth, which is ridiculous. So realize these are very crafty people that are, as you know, all the spammers and hackers are always working. And so you have to assume that. So the election integrity people have for years agreed that we can't rely upon the machines. And that's why we have to have audits. And the election should not be done until the audits are done. And unfortunately, most of the audits are packaged up to look good, but actually when you open them up and you start looking at them, they actually don't do very much. And that's the other problem, is a lot of people saying, yeah, we're doing some really gold standard audits in our state and they're the best around. And then you look at them and you go, well, you're only auditing a couple of contests, and ones that are really wide margin that no one cares about. Pennsylvania this time did not audit the presidential contest. They audited the state treasurer contest, which no one really cares about. And so I'm going to be posting about these audits coming up, about how bad they are. But it's just important for people to realize that we have to have these audits, and it's what is necessary. And even, you know, I promote ballot image audits because I think they're very meticulous. But even those are not good enough, because you have to get back and look at the paper, because we know that even that can be screwed with. Problem we got is a Democratic Party that will, and I'm worried about these, just like you are, Harvey, is that why aren't they more interested in raising awareness on this? You know, they went for years saying anyone that says anything about the election might not be right. You're an election denier and you should shut up. And now when it's their turn, they can't do anything because they've spent so much time saying that anybody is an election denier. And this is a pervasive problem in the Democratic Party, by the way. You know, there's sort of an agreement where if you don't agree with us, we want to kick you out because you're not quite along with our thinking. And this is the thing here. Like, if you say anything against the elections, well, you're an election denier. We don't like what you're saying. It's a big problem. And it has to do also with how the Democratic Party has basically divided itself up. And I was amazed about this when I first came across this party, because I thought, oh, well, they're going to be completely non-racial. Everybody's the same, equality for everyone. No, the Democratic Party is split up into 1 million caucuses. Each one is a Latino caucus, the MLK caucus, the Women's Caucus, the Young Democrats caucus. Everything is split up, and Veterans Caucus, everything, except then when they come to our group and they say, well, you don't have enough diversity. Well, yeah, because everybody else has joined in their little group. And what's with that? What's with this? It's identity politics. And then if you're not respecting that, then you're kicked out. So it's all related to the same mindset, unfortunately. And I haven't been able to get any traction on any of this election integrity stuff at all amongst the Democratic Party.
Amazing.
And yeah, and where is Kamala Harris? She's just disappeared. That's
well, I think during the campaign she was actually a hologram. That's the only thing we can makes any sense. Amila Reason is with us. I know we had promised Amila to discuss forming a green, eco broadcasting network, and it's very. When Greg comes on, he's so charismatic and so impactful that we move ahead. But I did want to acknowledge Marla. If you want to talk about our proposal or your proposal and the great idea of doing April 22nd as a environmental broadcast day, that would be great.
Thank you. I really didn't have anything planned, and I wasn't expecting to say anything.
Okay.
But I can say that I am trying to put together a a whole day of environmental programming to be offered to all 5 of the Pacifica radio stations and the 250 affiliates that are associated with Pacifica. It's in the works. My email is Myla, M-Y-L-A. You can see my name perhaps. Myla, M-Y-L-A .reason, R-E-S-O-N @gmail.com. And if you send something to Harvey at Solartopia @gmail, I'm sure he'll forward it to me if it looks appropriate. And by the way, Harvey, let me just say that I don't know whether you saw in the New York Times today that Biden or his minions had put a hold on the infrastructure money that it was dedicated to quote unquote clean energy. And apparently they put a hold on about $1 billion that was going to go to Vodal.
Oh, the nuclear plant in Georgia.
Yeah, did you see that?
No, I did not. So I'll
Oh,
take a
in
look.
fact, you were sort of thinking that might happen, or wondering whether
Right.
what might happen, and it turns out that he's squelching programs for battery technology and many other things, but the big tag is the nuclear plant in Georgia, and that's fascinating to me.
Well, the question that people were asking in the energy world, one of them is, will Trump be less pro-nuclear than Biden? It's hard to imagine any president being more pro-nuclear than Biden was. I mean, any billion-dollar lunacy that these guys from the nuclear industry came up with, Biden had $2 billion, at their disposal. The question is, what's Trump going to do about nuclear power?
And
A while ago, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, let me just say that, it's not only Biden, it's some of the stars and darlings of the Democratic Party, like Jennifer Granholm in Michigan, who, again, they have earmarked money that was supposed to go for infrastructure and for addressing the climate catastrophe, and they're trying to shovel billions of dollars to restart a zombie nuclear power plant, the Palisades plant, which is on the shores of what lake, Harvey?
Lake Illinois. Yeah, that's I don't know I don't know how many of you have seen it, but there was a fabulous 1-minute press conference from the governor of Illinois, Pritzker, who's a billionaire, by the way. And he just very with a straight face announced that he was unilaterally changing the name of Lake Michigan to Lake Illinois, which is great. And he also announced that the state of Illinois was going to be taking over Green Bay, Wisconsin. So, and that he has a further announcement to come about the Mississippi River. It's very funny. And, people got to understand, in the nonviolent world, the number one tool against a dictator is ridicule. And, nobody does it better than Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel and Jon Stewart and Desi Lydek. But, this was really a classic. Go ahead, Myla.
Before we move on to Alex Williams, who we see now. Hi, Alex. I can't stop talking about this before I mention Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, right.
And that is my way of ridiculing the reckless governor of the state of California, who
outrageous.
was tantalized by the offer of billions of dollars of money that had been earmarked again to address the climate crisis, and decided to abrogate the agreement, the historic agreement, to shutter the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant in 2024 and 2025, the 2 reactors. The first one would have been shuttered by now.
Right.
2024, but Newsom decided that he wanted the billions of dollars of climate money to keep this decrepit, embrittled reactor going. And you and I and millions of people in Southern California live downwind from that horrific disaster waiting to happen.
Right, and we did have minor earthquakes over the last couple days, dangerously close to Diablo Canyon. Myla, thank you so much. And we will meet next week, by the way. It's President's Day, but Mike Hirsch thinks we should meet, and I'm happy to do it. And we want to talk about, among other things, getting someone to declare for the presidency right now, because we need a counterpunch. Or whatever. I do want to congratulate the Philadelphia Eagles. It was a great game. Anyway, Alex Williams, go ahead, and then Mike Hirsch. And anybody else, we're going to sign off soon. So if you got something to say, please raise your hand. Go ahead, Myla.
Were you singing along with Kendrick?
No, I was in 24-hour fitness sitting on an exercise bike. So singing along would have been a little, I think they would have thrown me out. Alex Williams, go ahead, and then Mike. Anybody else, please raise your hand.
Hello?
Leave soon.
Hello?
Yes, Alex, go ahead.
Oh, I kind of.
Well, here you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the GREG PALAST film, and actually, I'm kind of on it the second time. And my question was, how can we get more people? It seems like well, not just Democratic Party, but this whole thing gets down to kicking people off the rolls. And it's not just Black people they can do it to. If they think somebody is going to be liberal or Democratic, like younger people or whatever, they might kick them too.
They do,
yeah. And they brought that up in the film too. But I can't understand
Democrats. I mean, the Democrats did a great job of purging young voters in the primaries to make sure that Bernie Sanders didn't get the nomination. So it's a bipartisan operation there.
This is what I wanted to say. If you ever get a chance, watch the documentary Freedom on My Mind. It's from 1994.
Okay.
And it's also, and that's what I want to say. Maybe if we can bum rush the Democratic Party, well, we have to, from the bottom up, because that's what they did in Mississippi and formed the Mississippi Democratic Freedom Party, which was an alternative to the regular Democratic Party, which was all segregated. And it's kind of similar today, where you have the corporate Democratic Party, which is running it, and then you have the grassroots. And like we've been saying, the grassroots kind of don't get hurt too much. So and that's because you need more people. I think if enough people either bum rush the party from the bottom or form a third party. Third party is a little hard. So
yeah,
I would go more toward trying to, because that's it. I mean, nobody shows up for, like, I'm guilty of it too. The local parties it's all top down. They tell you who to vote for. We've been talking, that's what I've been listening to all this on this broadcast right now. It's like, and GREG PALAST kind of brings it out. Because if you push against the grain, well, we've seen what happened with Bernie and everybody else. You somehow get kind of knocked out.
All right. Thank you for that, Alex. Much appreciated. Mike Hirsch, did you want to say something here? And we're at the top of the hour. Please, anybody else, raise your hand. We will meet again next week, even though it's President's Day. And we will come to some of the issues I advertised in the flyer. If you're not on our list, please put your email up and we'll get it. Steve Caruso, our great engineer, will add you to our Action Network list. But Mike Hirsch, go ahead, Mike.
Got a few quick points. I'll hit them really quick. One is I can attest to Bernie Sanders sometimes being grumpy. Our friend Steven Spitz, who's on our Zoom very often, and another Michigan alum, once walked up to Bernie in the Senate cafeteria and tried to engage him in some conversation. And Bernie said something like, "You don't bother somebody when he's eating his lunch."
Yeah, there you go.
And Spitz was taken aback for a moment, but yeah. But that said, Bernie is a really sweetheart of a guy. I remember I saw a tall, slim person with a shock of white hair, and I knew that it couldn't be Albert Einstein anymore. But it squinted and saw it was him, and I said, "Hey, Senator Sanders," and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" Waved back at me. So he very approachable guy, just a regular person. But anyway, we're kind of thinking that Bernie might not be willing to run for president again. His window might have been slammed shut on him by insiders in the Democratic Party. But we are looking for an heir apparent. And Sluggo, I think that the time is now to start looking around for people to step up. And while
Right.
that is going on, I've started kind of a project of my own, which compared to in The Wizard of Oz, where they said, "Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain." Well, I want to pull that curtain open and expose all of the hideous, unpalatable, and repulsive things about Trump, not to people like us who already despise him, but to his own supporters. So I've written one essay where I demonstrate the parallels between Trump's rhetoric and actions and those of Adolf Hitler, where I've used quotes from Mein Kampf to compare to what Trump is not only saying, which is bad enough, but what he's actually doing. And I've also knocked out a first draft of an essay asking the question, is Trump the Antichrist? To give the evangelicals something to think about. And what I'm trying to get at is, it doesn't really do us much good to aggravate each other and rile each other up about how horrible Trump is. I think we all know that. And a good 1/3 of the country, at least, is very much aware of how horrible and authoritarian and abusive Trump is. But there are a lot of people in the middle who obviously were not aware or didn't fully credit how horrible Trump is. And I think that we need to hammer away on them and also try to peel away a few of his base, because I think that some among his base are sincere Christian believers, not just like Trump, who claims to be, but they will have cognitive dissonance when they're confronted with his behavior and how he really resembles what the Bible warned them about the Antichrist. Now, I don't personally believe in the Antichrist. I don't think that that's a thing, but they do. And I think it would make sense to have a discussion about that and kind of just to get that out there. And the overall purpose of all of this, including rallying around spokespeople who could run for president in a couple of years, would be to delegitimize Trump as a person, as a political operative, like he did with Obama and the whole birth certificate shenanigans, like he does with a lot of elected officials. And I think that the key to getting rid of Trump is like how we got rid of Nixon. Nixon won by a massive landslide. Trump, as we talked about today, didn't really even win. And we were able to drive Nixon out. The peace movement was able to drive Lyndon Johnson out after he won a landslide. And I think the key to doing that is mobilizing antipathy and strong opposition to Trump, just as a person, as unfit for being in office. And I think that we need to rally people who don't necessarily agree with us, who don't necessarily engage in politics the way we do, and convince them that he's got to go. And then the pressure will build up. And I think that, like a lot of autocrats have, he may end up having to flee the country and seek refuge somewhere else. And whether he ends up shining Putin's shoes or whatever ends up happening, would love to see him go.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike, for that. And we do have a time certain of 4:20 to go. We got three hands. That'd be great. Mimi, then Lynn, and then Mickey. Thank you again for that, Mike. Much appreciated. Mimi, let's get you unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi there, everyone. Sorry, I'm driving again.
Oh.
Monday's a big errands day. I'm fine. I'm driving a route, I know. But I did send to you, Sluggo, and other people. There is a big California call to action to make polluters pay bill, and the ask right now is to ask your California legislators to sign on to the Make Polluters Pay bill. They've done it in Vermont. They just did it in New York State. I don't know if you got to catch the call. They did record it, Sluggo. They had a young woman, well, she's 18 now, from Fridays for Future, Sunrise perhaps. They did die-ins at the state capitol, and Governor Hochul signed it the very last day. And we need to do that here in California. So if you all would consider putting out that call to action to your California folks, if you're able to do that. And it was an excellent call. So watch the space. And just very briefly on solar is Governor Newsom put out a executive order saying that solar is costing ratepayers in California to make their electricity bill to go up. And it's just absolute nonsense. So, which I'm sure Sluggo knows. And so we're correcting that through Solar Rights Alliance, which is also a bipartisan group, sending corrected executive order about solar rates. And the logic is just so flawed. It's so, shifty. It's like saying that horses and buggies are most popular in America, right? But we've had cars for the past 100 years, and the other 149 years before that we did not. So it's that kind of bad logic. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Sluggo.
much. Okay,
Take
Mickey,
care.
go ahead, Mickey, later.
Hi. I told you I came in late, so I wanted to say when Greg said that it's not his specialty, when I brought up the problems with the electronic easily hacked, and Ray Lutz did a much better job explaining it. Problems with the voting machines, and Julie was remarkably good about saying it's $250 million, $1 billion that's going to cost in New York State alone to purchase those. And I complained already that, it's a done deal. You're not going to be able to keep, the people that come out of the Musk minions from getting in there and doing damage. So we have to really present all of this at the same time. And I mentioned this morning, isn't there a way to get on the nighttime talk shows with, if Leonardo DiCaprio is a director or producer of Greg's movie, and maybe that's the foot to get in the door and bring people who are, really spectacular and charismatic to get this. Wake up, people. Wake up. And this is how, make sure you don't get purged from the rolls. Make sure that, you don't allow your state to force electronic scanners and go back to ballots. It's, and the other thing too, that we've had, I saw the SAVE Act, which I forgot to mention. I just saw it on the chat. Women will have no idea if they got, I got married 56 years ago. My name is not what's on my birth certificate. They'll have no idea, and they won't have time to cure their registrations.
Good points. Good points. I do want to mention Robbie Webster is on with us. Robbie's a great documentary filmmaker. Good to see Robbie as a movie about the 1976 Seabrook demonstrations. It's nice to have you with us. Ruth Strauss with us. Dave Saltman, my buddy, with a tremendous resume in the news business. LYNN FEINERMAN, go ahead. Nicole, we're going to end in 11 minutes, so let's rock and roll. Go ahead, Lynn and Nicole. Anybody else want to say something? Now's the time.
Okie doke. per Harvey's comment about ridicule, I think we need to think way out the box, not think of making little, helping Republicans or waking anybody up or fighting being woke or anything else. I think we need to find somebody who is really our kind of person. And I would suggest that it's Stephen Colbert. I think he should run for president.
That would be a step down, I think, for him. But, he's
Stephen
quite-
Stephen
he's quite
Colbert's
brilliant.
sister ran for Congress and she was unsuccessful, but he was involved in helping her. I actually know Stephen's older brother, and they're a wonderful family.
I want Stephen Colbert for president.
Well, there you go. Get the website and start the movement. You got some power, Lynn. You're very
Yeah,
persuasive.
absolutely. Well, you're in California, Lynn, so you could go talk to Jimmy Kimmel. He'd be pretty good. Okay, Nicole Ung and then Barbara Wright.
Yes, the way that they're dismantling the government, the way it is, they're following somebody teaching, saying that they want to reboot the government, and it's reminding me of what the Pol Pot did in Cambodia. They brought the country to year zero, where everybody had to leave the country and start, digging in like the whole country turned into like a vast concentration camp. There was no more schools, no more cars, no more commerce. Everybody had to go and dig out in the countryside. And this is what they're doing. They're breaking our whole government apart. Everything that made America successful, they're tearing it apart. They don't even know how to rebuild it, but they're just tearing it apart.
Yes, I'm very good, and I will point out that I'm actually doing a piece right now that the United States is completely now out. Somebody's talking in the back. Has lost its worldwide competitiveness in four basic products, which automobiles, because we turned our back on electric cars, solar panels, which are it's just a nightmare now. AI, because there's this the DeepSeek is going to just take again Chinese. These are all Chinese, and then the final one was very interesting is drones. If you want to look at the future of warfare, there was a very amazing New York Times piece a few weeks ago on a reporter embedded with the Ukrainian drone operators and completely changed the nature of warfare. And the United States is nowhere in any of those. So our day is done. I think Trump is a classic end of empire, Caligula, Nero kind of emperor. But we'll talk about that in greater detail next week. Again, we will meet next week, even though it's President's Day. Barbara Wright, go ahead. Anybody else you want to get a word in edgewise? We're about to disappear. Go ahead, Barbara.
What I wanted to say, I'm old school. I've been a Democrat for a long, long time. My grandmother indoctrinated me into being a Democrat when I was a little punk. And I say to anybody that's involved with the campaign, anybody that's going to run for office or has run for office, don't play the game the way the Democrats have always played it. We never seem to want to sling mud. Notice the Republicans. They'll sling mud in a heartbeat, and it won't be the whole lub-dub. It'll be just dub. And they do it. And we have got to play the game their way. And when we get somebody like Trump, I cannot fathom why Kamala Harris didn't come out and literally smear that man from Saks Fifth Avenue to the Grand Canyon for being nothing but a sexist, a sociopath, and a psychopath. And I don't care if it's city council, and I don't care if it's for Congress. We lost a congressional race because Jamie McLeod Skinner wouldn't nail Greg Walden for the fact that the people in his own county wouldn't vote for him. And we got what we got now. And let's put it to you this way. I wish I could get the salary that Cliff Bentz gets for doing nothing. It'd sure make life a lot easier. That's my comment.
Well, thank you for that. Ace Hoffman is with us. Ace, we hope your health is good. One of the great activists, along with Ray Lutz, on the nuclear issue. Very disturbing to hear that this great Democrat, Gavin Newsom, is supporting nuclear power. I heard rumors that AOC was in flirting with it. So we got to deal with that. Eileen Proctor, good to see you. Seeing no further hands, and it being 4:15, it's been a great time. I want to thank Greg Palast and Patrice for coming on with us. This is our 211th show. I like to call them gatherings. We started with election protection, and we're going to continue with that, as well with the conversion, as Myla Reeson knows, to a totally green-powered Earth. So we will meet next week, even though it's President's Day. I will probably want to take one off in March instead. So we will do that. Good to see everybody. James Brown, good to have you with us. We love your music. And we'll see everybody else. And CB Buckley, you're wearing a Wicked hat. You need to be green next time. You're very blue right now. So I like it. It's great to look at you. Everybody, no nukes. We'll see you in Solartopia. Okay? Take care.
No nukes.
And thank you, Steve Caruso, for your engineering. You're fabulous. We really appreciate it. Bye, you guys. We will see you in Solartopia.
Got help from man behind the curtain. Sorry, that was kind of